So it's the day after Chris Christie's big press conference regarding the scandal surrounding the bridge closing in Fort Lee, New Jersey. How is the shakeout for Christie? Folks, this is a classic example of a crisis communications situation because Chris Christie's entire reputation, his brand, his political future is at stake. How he handled himself yesterday and how he handles himself in the media in coming months will determine his future, perhaps even the future of the country, if he runs for president. So how did he do? I have to give him very mixed grades. On the actual performance skills of how he handled himself in the media interview, there are many things he did well. He wasn't rushed. He spoke for 107 minutes. He didn't seem like he was trying to pressure or manipulate reporters into finishing things up. He didn't say certain topics were off limits. He said, "I am sorry." He apologized. He connected with people at the right level emotionally. He talked about his embarrassment, his humiliation, expressed doubt. So as a human being, there are a lot of things I thought he did quite well that addressed some of the concerns of his critics. However, there are still a number of issues that he simply did not resolve. Part of what you want to do when you have a press conference like this is you want to answer questions. You want to resolve issues. You want to put people's concerns at rest. And unfortunately, he just didn't do that. And I don't know if he could, given the circumstances. For starters, if we're going to judge him on how he communicated in this crisis, we have to look at the timing. The fact that he waited this long to address this issue when it happened back in September, and prominent media personalities have been talking about this in prime time for months, is very damning to Christie, because he's essentially saying he heard criticism of wrongdoing and he just put his head in the sand. That is not what people expect from a tough former prosecutor who likes to root out evildoing everywhere. So that really cuts against him, waiting this long, letting this issue percolate for so long. The other big problem for Chris Christie is, if you have to look at the political dynamics here, folks, and liberals and Democrats obviously don't like Chris Christie nationally because they view him as a threat to a Democratic presidential nominee. But Christie is in a unique political situation in that so many conservative Republicans don't like Chris Christie because they don't like the fact that he gave Barack Obama a hug. They view him as too moderate. So Chris Christie has a lot of enemies on the right and the left. So his real base of support is people who believe that they somehow transcend politics, that they are above traditional party politics. And the unfortunate specifics of this incident is that it seems as though Chris Christie is a part of a culture that is just the absolute worst of political hackery, political paybacks, using the force of government to shut down roads and bridges as punishment. That actually seems substantially worse than all the overt partisanship going on in Washington, D.C. for the last year. So unfortunately, the specifics of this issue, of this crisis, really destroy the primary base of support for Christie, the people who want to sort of transcend politics, the people who want bipartisanship. So the fundamental answers Christie still hasn't dealt with is, well, he said he didn't know anything about this. If anything comes out as far as his assistant chief of staff saying, "Oh no, I definitely briefed him," well, then he's completely destroyed his reputation. But the problem isn't just as simply as him saying, "I didn't know anything about it," because then it calls into question his fundamental judgment as a leader and as a manager. Because if you hire a lot of people in a lot of different organizations that are accountable to you, and they're all corrupt, and they're doing things illegal, immoral, unethical on your behalf, and you're in the dark, that says you're an incompetent manager. That's hardly the basis of a strong foundation if you want to run for president as the manager of the executive branch. So that really hurts him. And even if you give him some slack there, you have to call into question the fact that he was so uncurious about this whole scandal, even though so many people have been talking about it, writing about it, month after month after month, and he just continued to ignore it until there was hard, cold evidence staring him in the face in the form of these emails and extended media coverage. So this is a very difficult issue where the typical strong media performance, good message, great sound bites are going to be very hard to help him in this situation. Beyond that, now there are official investigations by U.S. attorneys. There's the allegation, I'm not saying it's full of merit, but the allegation that a woman died because she couldn't get to the hospital in time. Now, something like that is virtually impossible to prove either way. People die every day. This was a 91-year-old woman. People die on the way to hospitals and in hospitals all the time. But it is difficult. Some commentators at MSNBC, like Lawrence O'Donnell, have suggested this woman dying on the way to the hospital because of the bridge closing is going to be the Willie Horton for Christie. There's no doubt that this is going to be a tremendous headache, PR nightmare, perhaps even legal nightmare for Christie. Now, I work with a lot of clients all over the world, helping them in crisis situations. Christie is not my client, but I am hard-pressed to figure out what the right message is or the right tone is to get him out of this mix, because there's so many bigger features to this story that go beyond what you can fix in a one-day press conference. Christie is going to have a full 4 years. He hasn't even been sworn into his second term, so he's not going away anytime soon. It's hard for me to imagine this scandal percolating to the point where he has to resign from office, but it certainly is a serious, serious dent into his presidential ambitions.